People who quit their jobs on the first day. What was your "I'm outta here" moment?
When the microwave in the lunchroom was coin activated.
I've been scrolling this thread for a couple hours now, and I'm so glad I found this. I actually laughed out loud. Thank you.
I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it is cash in hand, so I could sign on to the dole, unemployment benefit, to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was up to me to illegally collect the dole to subsidize them, I don't know.
Applied for a job at my longtime favorite restaurant, celebrated my birthday there every year. Owner asks me to come in for basically a tryout, as I communicated I was looking at other job possibilities. I come in and they just stick me on dishwashing for an hour, no biggie. Then their dishwasher doesn't show up, so the kitchen manager asks me to stay one for their lunch rush. Sire, I'll get paid for the hours. I do. Kitchen staff was nice, so I was happy to help out even though I figured I'd be taking a different job. I fill out a time card at the end of the shift and tell the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understands and thanks me for the help. Fast forward a couple weeks and he tells me to email the owner after I ask him if I should pick up my measly paycheck. I do. She basically tells me to F off over text. Tells me it was staging, and that she told me I wouldn't be paid. I respond that I understand that, but that I stayed an extra 3 hours which I was told I'd be paid for. She stops responding. I decide I want to be petty over the $40, so I get the STATW Labor Department involved. Dude goes in there and makes her pay me for the hours including the first staging hour. Couple weeks later I got my $40, never went back to that restaurant.
You're not petty. I wonder how many other people they fleeced for free labor.
That's bullpoo. Watch what happens if you took $40 out of the till.
Salesman for Kirby Vacuums. First sale call was to a single elderly woman who was supporting her son in hospital. They got us in the door by offering a free carpet clean as a demonstration. The supervisor training me pushed and pushed to make the sale until this old woman was in tears. Just as she was about to sign the paperwork, I asked if she actually wanted to vacuum and she said it was lovely but she couldn't afford it. I took the paperwork away from her and said not to worry. Outside I told the supervisor I quit, to which he replied I would have been fired anyway. No love lost. I hung around for half an hour playing on my phone to make sure the supervisor left because he was a real piece of work.
I got suckered into doing that when I was 17, naive, and desperate for a job. Biggest bunch of scumbags I ever met. The guy driving the van had some kind of relationship with the girl sitting shotgun and they were arguing, loudly, and she just straight up jumped out of the van while it was moving. His, and everyone else's reaction, was, "We should get out of here." They wanted to just ditch this poor girl in AF in random suburb an hour and a half from the city we drove out of. The only reason they picked her up is I swore to God and heaven above I would give everyone's names and addresses to the police. A few of them had paper out, so they didn't like that. I had been working there for like 2 weeks at this point, but didn't go back after getting home that evening. Reprehensible garbage. Actually a pretty decent product, though.
Worked in a hotel for a day. No one told me where anything was. Got chewed out for it. Guests enjoying their meals told me to pay no mind. I was doing a good job and that my boss is AC. I told the manager that I was quitting and wouldn't be doing the next shift. I arrived the next day, returning a work uniform, and my supervisor approached me and yelled at me for being late. I told her I already quit, but if I was working, technically I was 5 hours early for my shift. Absolute nutcases.
I feel you. Was interviewed for a 5* hotel to do communications and event management. Spent 3 days washing the dishes, absolutely not a part of a job description. After 3 days I quit and they were surprised as I am a 4th person to quit this position. Maybe you want to advertise it differently.
The not getting told how to something then getting told off for doing it wrong thing happened to me. I was so mad. Got told to put something on shelves by checkout. Asked if there's any specific way it needs to be done. Get told, no, idiot, It's not hard, you just put as much as you can fit on the shelf. Stack stuff on shelf. Why didn't you follow protocol around displaying stuff here? You have to count exactly how many you use for stock control and display them a certain way. Thought that one was a one-off, but the next day I ask what I should be doing after a busy period. There's nothing to do for a bit. Make us all coffee to practice using the machine. Halfway through making coffee, why haven't you done really important job? You don't have time to be taking coffee breaks. This was my trainer versus the manager. Turns out the trainer didn't want someone else working with her, so she sabotaged me and set me up for the manager to catch me doing the wrong things she'd told me to do. I told him they clearly have some issues to work out among themselves and quit.
It was a petrol station and the manager wanted me to work for free until I had learned their computer systems to what he deemed a satisfactory extent. I agreed to do it, because I needed a job, and he brought me in at 7 a.m. on my first day. However, he was not present to go through the training with me, so I was just standing around kind of helping out on the forecourt but not really knowing what I should be doing. Not learning anything. After about an hour and a half without the manager showing up or anyone training me on anything, I decided that I wasn't going to continue to be taken advantage of and told the cashier to pass on the message to the manager that I had quit.
Yeah, red flag, if it's not a volunteer position, such as at a charity store or an animal shelter, and they ask you to work for free. It's never worth it.
It was my first day at Five Guys. It was around 10:30 p.m. and they told me it was time to clock out, despite not having finished closing. I then worked until almost midnight. I did not return.
One of my pals had one of these clock out, keep working gigs. Reported him to the Wage and Hour Division, Link. The business was heavily fined for every single violation and people got their stolen wages back.
I would probably just smile at them all confused and laugh like, what the F is that a joke? The second I'm off the clock I am vacating that building post haste my friend. I will waste as little unpaid seconds of my time as possible exiting the premises.
I was hired at a chain restaurant to be a hostess. I was so excited because my last job was washing dishes and because of my eczema, I had to quit. It was too painful to do that job. So, I arrived at my new job dressed up to be a hostess and those MFERS took me back to the kitchen to do dishes because the dishwasher just quit. I noped out of there real fast.
Fellow eczema, glad you got the F out of those jobs. Can't imagine anything worse.
I wasn't the person, but I was training a new guy at a movie theater. A customer asked for extra butter. She was nice and normal. Not a mean or rude customer. The kind I would pay to handle all day long. He puts the popcorn tub down, says I'm going to the bathroom, takes off his apron and walks out the front door and never came back.
He had better things to do.
Had 2 interviews to work housekeeping at a hospital. Got a call the night of the second interview at around midnight from the guy saying, I was just so excited I wanted to call and tell you I'm gonna call you to offer you the job tomorrow. Should have taken that as the first red flag, but I needed the job. I go in for my first day of training and he has printouts of my Facebook wall and my boyfriend's. He started asking me how long we had been together and made it clear he knew everything so not to lie to him. It was so uncomfortable. I leave his office and do some training. We break for lunch and he sits with me in the cafeteria asking how it's been going so far, etc. Then tells me he expects to see me at his church Sunday. I haven't gone to church in like 10 years at this point. We all have a quick meeting in our main room and I stay back after everyone had left. I put my badge, keys and walkie on the desk and walked the F out. I felt bad, but it was no wonder why they can't keep anyone. He called me for months afterwards asking what had happened. He was worried sick, he deserves answers, blah blah blah. I had called their HR the day after I had walked out to tell them I quit and why, so they had to have told him. He had no reason to keep contacting me.
Printouts of Facebook stuff? Holy balls, that's a line he crossed right over. No thanks.
That's creepy as F.
Holy poo.
I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later the restaurant was investigated for a number of fraud activity.
That's illegal. They can't pay you waitstaff tipped wages if you're not getting tipped.
I had a job for one day selling home security equipment door to door. The whole idea was basically to make it seem like you're doing them a service and then lock the customer into 5-year contracts. My supervisor and I were in this one home of a family that hardly some English. The father said they had been struggling with finances, but my supervisor kept pushing it on them, and the customer seemed like he didn't fully understand what was going on. I couldn't in good conscience take these people that were already struggling and put them in a worse position.
It's the same for retailers that force credit cards with ridiculous APRs. I cannot, in good conscience, tell someone who is financially hurting to sign up for a card that would do more harm than good. The worst thing is, they cut your hours if you don't get enough people to sign up for the cards.
I didn't quit, but it was an interview many years ago. The position was for an admin assistant. I got to the place and it was in the back of a strip mall kind of, just a small parking lot and a forest. I go in to interview and the guy tells me it is in fact not an admin position but an alarm system cold calling position. I immediately knew he was wasting my time and his but finished it out. He told me there would be a lot of evenings just him and I working. I don't think so. He also said that he loves to reward his team for good sales and always takes them to Mexico. I walked out and told my husband, BF at the time, there was no way I was taking that. I got a call for a second interview but never picked up the phone. So sketch.
A trip to Mexico with my boss would be a nerve-wracking experience for me, not a reward.
I interviewed for a professional marketing assistant and got the job straight away. I was under the impression that I would be an assistant to the man I was interviewed by. When I showed up for my first day, the same waiting room I was in the previous day was full of people. I quickly learned that we were all hired, and that I would be a door-to-door salesperson selling some pretty useless poo. I spent my entire day inside a Starbucks applying for other jobs and went home, got paid, but never went back.
A similar thing happened to me. I feel your pain. I applied for an event planner job, having previously worked as a wedding planner, and got an interview with a company based in the city. Went to the interview the next day and something was off but I couldn't figure it out. They asked me to work a trial day the day after, so I said yes. Get to the morning briefing and my trainer said we'd be working away from the office, so I'm thinking, what sort of event is it? What would I be doing? How exciting. I'd be standing on a street corner in the rain trying to get OAPs, so sign up to give to charities. What a scam.
Not me, but I was training a new lifeguard. After our shift was mandatory staff training for our entire crew, where we practice rescues. Once she found out we actually had to practice and go in the water, she just walked out. Not really sure what kind of job she thought she had signed up for.
I knew someone like that. She tolerated the water and activity enough to get certified because she just wanted to work as a lifeguard. In her head, that just meant getting to wear the red sweater and playing on her phone in the sun all day while flirting with guys. She didn't last long.
It was a waitress gig for a local restaurant. I finished my first day, then was told that training would continue for 6 weeks. While I was in training, all of the tips I got had to be given to my trainer. I was being paid less than $2 an hour. I called the next day and said it wasn't gonna work out.
That doesn't seem legal at all.
I technically quit before my first day. I got hired at a well-known gift store. I was hired with the understanding that I would work Saturdays, Sundays, and a grand total of 8 hours a week, so 2 4-hour shifts. Also at minimum wage. Not a problem with me. Done that before. I would just pick up a part-time job for rest of the week. Nope. Apparently that wasn't allowed. The manager thought that was a horrible thing and disrespectful to her. I should only work for them and only them, and I should have better control over my money if I can't survive on $64 a week before taxes. Yeah. Didn't show up cause F that noise. She called pissed off that I wouldn't show up to such an opportunity.
I interviewed at UPS as a truck stocker back in the day. I was already working a part-time job and renovating homes. This was just gonna be a part-time gig since the hours worked out 4 to 7 a.m. a few days a week. When I showed up, they told me that it was unacceptable to have any other work priorities because this was going to be my number one priority. Got up and immediately left as she was still going through her introductory speech.
I'm always amazed at people who expect workers give their all for a handful of hours of work. My favorite place to work for was a mom and pop shop that paid their workers above minimum wage along with making good amount of tips on top of that, and they said straight out they will never expect their workers to only work for them. They usually ran the place and just needed someone on the weekends when they needed one extra person, and once or twice throughout the week when they had to take care of business out of the shop. They even worked around your main job as well.
Greater than I can't survive on $64 a week before taxes. Does that even meet the criteria to be taxed? Because if it does, this is starting to reach comedic levels of stupid regarding how the rich and poor are taxed.
I did one shift at Bath and Body Works. First I had to come in for like a 4-hour session of watching videos and I'm not even sure I got paid for it. Then they told me to come in for the 430 to 830 shift. During the shift I was chastised for not following customers who had asked to be left alone, told to try to grab children to put the new sparkly lotion on, and continually harassed to sell things to people. When the store closed at 830, I was making conversation with a worker about closing. I had mentioned having worked at Toys R Us before and wanted to compare the closing times. She told me that they normally got out close to midnight. Have you ever been in one of these stores? There's no reason why a fully staffed store that size should take 4 hours to close. Told the manager not to even bother putting me on the schedule. She was surprised and gave me the stink eye for the remaining hour we were there. Ridiculous. Also they insisted on abbreviating the store's name to BB&W. Say that and then say Bath and Body Works. How many syllables did you save?
I took a part-time job at Bath and Body Works during the holidays years ago. I made it through the videos and tried one shift. The store was freezing for some reason and the manager kept berating me for having my arms crossed. She also didn't like my posture. I told her I wouldn't be back and she said good luck getting another job because she wouldn't give me a reference. Amazingly, I've been just fine.
The syllable saving isn't my problem with that abbreviation, they moved the in for some reason. That abbreviation is Bath Body and Works.
Started a new job unloading shipping containers and was told they had to be empty by midday. This was imperative because a new one was going to arrive in the early afternoon. It was a two-man job if we both worked our asses off to get it done. Boss says, "Oh, also your offsider is off work today. You will need to get this cleared." I just walked out. Even if it was a trial by fire, I wasn't interested in working for these CS, F that.
Is trial by fire actually a thing? Like employers actually do that?
When at the daily meeting a manager said if they found out who put a paper bag with human excrement in an employee's locker.
It's good you got out of there before they found out you did it.
My very first job was at a buffet restaurant that was popular with senior citizens and known for their desserts. I was asked to get another coconut cream pie from the back, and as I was getting it out of the fridge, another employee bumped into me and I dropped it on the floor, pie side down. This employee's, someone who'd worked there for years, solution was to just scrap off all the whipped topping and replace it. I was horrified they served pie that had been on the extremely dirty floor and never went back. Edit to add. Since you all are guessing, it was a lone local place, not any of these chains you're guessing.
Yikes, WTF. I got a job at a Build-A-Bear knockoff at the end of a mall that wasn't very busy. My interview with the owners was interesting. They were an older couple who said that they had wanted to open a Chick-fil-A, but you need about $1 million to do that. My first day, one other girl was working, and she didn't really talk to me. I had basically no training and she disappeared into the back. I was standing at the register area, which was underneath a giant storybook mushroom. A mother and her young son walk in and start to look at the bear skin options. I greeted them and left them to look around. They ended up leaving after a couple minutes and my coworker reappeared from the back with the cordless phone and handed it to me. It was my boss. He told me that when a customer walks in, he wants me to come out from under the mushroom to them. Come out from the mushroom. After he finished speaking to me, I hung up and went to my coworker and asked about the phone call. She said the place has cameras set up and the owners watch them from their house and call in a lot. I did not come back to work after that day.
My uncle and aunt own a car repair shop. When I went to visit them, roughly 80% of their day was spent sitting on the couch staring at the cameras in the shop on their iPad, and every now and then calling their son, whom they hired to manage the place, livid because someone didn't do X or Y correctly. I can't imagine owning a shop or franchise and basically babysitting via iPad all day.
Build-A-Bear?
Not mushroom for improvement there.
I worked at a place where the owners watched the cameras and called. I just took it but had 2 co-workers walk out because they were sick of it. I've shared this story before, but I worked at a sushi restaurant and there was a sushi chef there named Mac that had been there for a while. He was pretty cool and we got along great when we worked together. His girlfriend also worked there as a cashier and a lot of times they were scheduled together. One Saturday that I was supposed to be off, I get a call from Carol, the bitch boss, asking me if I could come in. Apparently Max and his girlfriend had had enough of her and they both just straight up left and walked out of the restaurant. The place was pretty small, so usually it was just the cooks in the back, the sushi chef, and the cashier delivery driver. So, when they left, they basically left the place empty aside from the cooks, who did not speak English that well. I decided to take the shift for the extra money, and when I got there Carol was already there behind the sushi prep area making orders. She usually didn't come in at all on weekends, but would still watch the security cameras occasionally from her laptop at home, and if she saw you standing around doing nothing, she would call and yell at you. It turns out that was exactly what she did to Max and his girlfriend, and they had finally had enough. Carol showed me the security footage of Max yelling at her over the phone, hanging up, then taking off his apron, and both him and his girlfriend flipping of the security camera and walking out. She was showing me because she couldn't believe how disrespectful they were and how they could just leave the restaurant like that when there were customers in it. Personally, I thought it was pretty badass they walked out together. I know I wanted to quit hundreds of times when I was there, but I was a broke college student that needed the money. Last I heard of them was they both got jobs at the sushi place that was competing with this restaurant.
Electronics store. My first day we had to attend a class where they teach people how to upsell folks. Basically walked you through ignoring what they ask you for and using their ignorance of the equipment against them. I thought that was really scuzzy. Then they went on to tell us about a commission-style bonus program that basically forced employees to upsell everyone. When we took the break for lunch that first day I peaced out and went home. Never got paid for those 4 hours, but I never regretted bouncing on that.
My very first job was at a little drive-in restaurant close to my high school. I showed up to work the first day. The lady said I had to pay her $50 for training. She showed me around the place and said that my pay would be $4.50 per hour as a car hop. This was in 2010. And all the tips I made went into a bucket with all the other girls' tips. At the end of the night, she counted up tips, kept 20% for herself and split the rest up evenly among every employee. Also, part of our job was 1 day a week we had to spend 4 hours cleaning her house. It seemed super shady. I literally left after listening to her go over all these rules. My dad was pissed until I explained, and another girl confirmed, and my dad agreed I did the right thing.
Shady and highly illegal. Tip pooling is legal but is supposed to be only with other tipped employees. Her skimming 20% off the top is not legal. Pretty sure you can't charge someone to train him for a job you hired them for.
Yes, almost everything you said was illegal.
Pootie motel gig in Raleigh, North Carolina when I was young and desperate for a job, any job. Came in to relieve the cigarette hag overnight lady who told me about the bat she kept beneath the counter, which rooms had the prostitutes and which rooms were for the genuinely lost tourists, how not to give out towels to certain people because they had 10 plus people to a room and they were trying to get him to leave. While she was talking to me, one of the prostitutes came up and paid her with sweaty boob money. Also, they expected me to do laundry in the back room in between babysitting the front desk. Also to watch out for stray needles or paraphernalia in the sheets. I overheard a man in the lobby on the phone, talking about how he had a friend who was in jail and he was going to hire him to kill his cousin who was in that same jail. All in between bites of bargain bin Fruit Loops from the continental breakfast. I left. They never sent me my check for working that day and I never called to get it. Edit. It was over by Crabtree Mall area. I tried to look it up again but I think they must have torn it down and built something new over it. Probably for the best.
I honestly thought you meant she had a bat under the desk for like 2 minutes.
You accepted the hit on the guy's cousin, didn't you? Gotta take what you can get in this economy, I suppose.
Worked at McDonald's years ago in their assistant manager training program. Had gotten hired right out of the army. First day I met with the store manager where I'd be working and training and noted that she spent majority of the time doing entry-level work and then working OT to do store manager work. She told me this was pretty common because of the type of people they'd hire. Her office was a counter and she told me she had bought a chair but corporate made her remove it. She was really nice, worked her ass off and was intelligent and told me she'd been at McDonald's for 10 years. I imagined working my ass off only to be told I couldn't have a chair and decided that night I wasn't going to work for a company like that.
I worked a temp job once for a Toys R Us warehouse for a few months. Basically I, along with a bunch of other people, were there to cut the tops off of boxes. 4 employees per large low metal tables. Half the time there was some F up where we were scheduled to work, But no boxes were available. So we got paid to stand around. Couldn't sit on the low table. Had to stand. Stand there like an idiot and twiddle your thumbs because the boss was mad that he had to pay you. No sitting. 111.
I went into orientation for a new job as truck driver. Obviously you know you will be away from home, but this was pooty. Out on the road 30 days at a time, then only 36 hours, or 1.5 days at home. You only work 6 out of 7 days. So 4 of those days you just sit at the truck stop unable to move. And not getting paid. Can't bring a pet of any type. So I would only be home 18 days a year. On the road for 347 days a year, and unpaid for 52 of them. The no pets rule was the final straw for me. I will not be out 30 days alone with no little friend to keep me sane. I no pet out of there.
Always reading they can't get drivers. In their advertisements they talk about being home more and how important drivers are. I think it was a former Swift driver saying with them as you go out you are getting low per mile pay that does increase but, as it does you sit more waiting for a job.
Inhumane.
How is any of that legal? It seems really extreme to keep someone on the road that long.
Truckers have different employment rules, so yay, totally legal. Bad companies do lose their drivers to better companies pretty easily though. This company paid $300 a day flat rate, so to many it is worth it, plus they had new automatic trucks, and no touch freight. Just not for me.
It was a small independent insurance agency in 2006. My first day there the owner, a true fossil, said email and fax were strictly forbidden as he only believed in communication in person, by phone, or through mail. Left for lunch and never went back. I couldn't imagine the inefficiency I'd have dealt with had I stayed. They ultimately closed their doors, so it was definitely the right decision.
Can't believe they even opened in the first place. My dad was always jumping on the latest technology to get business, and that was in the 80s. I can't imagine anyone thinking they can do person-to-person only in 2006. Sometimes you've just got to email.
Exactly. This guy didn't even do voicemail. Had those old message books by every phone and expected all messages to be hand-delivered to his office. It was insane.
Took a summer job at a textile plant and the trainer said, forget about taking a break if you want to stay caught up.
Reply: forget about being caught up.
Took a job at DQ. Paid training wage and first day made it clear we weren't to take our breaks. Got a job at Wendy's where they paid minimum and told us to take our breaks, so I quit DQ after just 1 day.
I was a cashier at this cafeteria for a large company in my town. The people that worked at the company would put their tips in a bucket and the people made a lot of money, so there was like 10s and 20s. The manager of the cafe wouldn't let me have any of tips because she said that cashiers couldn't be trusted, so she would ship the tip money to a church in El Paso. I immediately knew that this was a load of bullpoo and I just never went back. It's also illegal, I think, to collect money for one thing but do something else with it without disclosing what it is for.
Weird that someone doesn't trust a cashier with money.
No way was it going to any church. It was going directly into her bank account.
It is in fact illegal.
Greater than says she would ship the tip money to a church in El Paso. Yeah, there is zero chance any church in El Paso got even a penny of that money.
My first day working at EB Games. I was super excited to be there. The first half of my shift was basically tidy up the shelves. It was a high traffic location, so the shelves always need tidying. After 5 hours of following kids around and putting things away, I go on break. When I come back, my manager is standing in his strangely empty store, absolutely aghast, staring at a huge steaming pile of poo on the carpeted floor. Apparently a homeless person had walked in. Without saying a single word, he dropped true and emptied his bowls. My boss at me and says, "Oh good, you're back. Just in time. Clean that up, I'm going for lunch." I laughed at him and told him, "You can't be serious. I'm not going near that." He responds with, "It's your job, I'm taking a break. I want it gone before I get back." I told he's going to have to deal with it on his own because I don't need this job that bad. So I quit. I grabbed my coat and went home. 1 week later, the district manager calls me up to apologize and offer me my job back. I worked in one jail, and on my first day, whoever runs the investigations of prisons busted my sergeant and 5 other COs for bringing DG and effing male inmates. Didn't even wait till the end of my shift.
Sounds like you passed up on a job with a lot of potential for upward advancement.
This might be the craziest on this thread.
That's quite the first day.
Ended up being a scam to try and get free labor. I went for a job interview as a security guard. A man and a woman asked me my name, asked me how strong I was, then hired me and asked me to start immediately. That started alarm bells ringing, 2 questions in an interview and I am employed and working with no discussion about anything else. They took me down to their warehouse, office interview was above it, and told me to start moving boxes from a shelf into a truck. I said hang on, the job is security not manual labor, and then they started getting really putty with me and saying if you want the job then you need to do this as part of it. I was like yeah nah, I am out, and walked out. Total scam. There was no job and it really pissed me off because I could have gone to another interview at that time but choose to go there instead.
Something similar happened to me when I was young and dumb. Lady had a horse farm and told me it was a working interview. She had me shovel poo for hours and other chores. I was too ignorant and desperate to understand what had happened. I waited by the phone all the next day for the call I never got. I finally called my mom up and told her what happened, and she enlightened me on how some people are per bags.
I remember doing my licensing training and the trainer said to us, no security position should ever require you to 1. Do manual labor, 2. Clean unnecessarily, or 3. Make an arrest by yourself. AKA, you're not free manual labor, you're not a custodian, and you're not paid enough to make arrests. For the most part, obviously, exceptions apply.
Fast food chain. I was 17. I found out during training that the place had been robbed 3 times in the past month and 1 employee was seriously injured. Not worth the $5 per hour. Edit. For those asking about the pay and the time, this was the U.S. state of Georgia in 2004.
I worked at a KFC when I was 16. I remember the training orientation video told us over and over not to be a hero if you get robbed. Do they really think we're gonna take a bullet for them? Like we're gonna scream, "Not on my watch," and dive over the counter?
Went into an Italian restaurant for my first day of work and I got 3 red flags on the very first day. 1, the manager said he had lots of hours for me and getting shifts would be no problem. Every single other employee told me that they were struggling for hours and that they had no idea why they hired me. 2, everyone said the manager was an asshole. Even the customers. 3, it was my first day there, and I actually had to teach the woman training me how to do 1 or 2 things.
Probably hired you to replace that woman.
Wait, did we work at the same restaurant? I got hired at a dying Italian restaurant with almost no business. They had 5 waiters at lunch for a total of 3 tables. The owner had said they needed workers and that I would work full-time. I did technically work full-time, but with no tables, I just got the $2.15 an hour. And this was not the kind of place to make up the difference on the days I didn't make minimum wage.
No AC in the delivery truck in West Texas, eat ADK.
I used to work dispatch for a waste disposal company in Florida and none of the garbage trucks had air conditioning. All the drivers would come back drenched in sweat, smelly, exhausted, and all red when they were returning their keys and forms for the night. Unsurprisingly, the company has a 1-star rating on Google. I felt bad for the drivers.
I was a waitress, the only waitress, at a just-opened diner. The boss didn't have me sign any paperwork. Everything was under the table. But that wasn't what made me quit at the end of the night. In order to get me where he wanted me to go, he would pinch my skirt at my upper thigh, not quite the butt but very close, and pull me around like it was a leash. Needed me in the kitchen? Rather than call me, he would come out, pinch my skirt and pull to the kitchen. Needed me at the cash machine? Again, come over to wherever I was, didn't matter if I was serving a customer, and would grab my skirt to pull me. That act in itself made some customers uncomfortable. Mind you, one couple left an almost 50% tip in the end. But I think it was more out of pity and embarrassment on my behalf. I was supposed to come in the next day, but I called that night and said the job wasn't for me. I came in a couple days later to turn in my apron and he just took a wad of cash out of his pocket and paid me then and there. God, he was creepy. I think it was a smart move to quit.
Second day actually, but the person who was training me at a McDonald's during the summer in college was so inconsistent and would forget about me. Second day she asked me what time it is, I pointed out the wall clock and said the time. She goes, "Oh, I can't read them fancy clocks." Made me sad more than anything. I grew up in a very rural poor area. But also I realized that she wasn't having an off day with her pooty training and would be my supervisor. Didn't go back my third day.
I worked at a restaurant and the gal that ran it hired her husband for maintenance. He took a phone call for her once and asked me to leave her a note. For a split second I thought to myself, write it yourself you lazy F, but then I realized he couldn't write. It remained unspoken, but I became his official note taker when needed. Pretty sad, actually.
That's just sad.
I was hired as a cook in a country club in Miami, Florida back in 2002. It was the grossest kitchen I have worked in the US. I have been through worse in the US and around the world. Most of the food in the coolers was rotting, there were ants on the cutting board they had me work at. The guy training me picked up a towel off of the floor to push the ants out of the way so I could work. Many of the food that should have been refrigerated was left out. The walk-in freezer door would not close because there was so much ice build up. I felt like I was going to vomit the whole time I was there. I made it through the day, then did not come back for my second day. The chef called me and I told him that I would not come back. He threatened to call the culinary school I went to and tell them I walked out on him. I told him that was fine and called the health department and reported their practices. They called me a year later to follow on the claim and had time to go check it out. What a joke. I stand by my choice to quit with no notice and reporting them.
Was hired as a server, sure, no problem. Got there, they were like, nope, you're doing dishes. After 8 hours of dishes I went home. I'm not a dishwasher and I was told I'd be serving. Never went back, never got paid. Didn't care, the couple running it were a bunch of jerks anyway.
Same here. Hired to bus tables as I had at another restaurant. First shift put on dishwashing. Got home at 2 a.m. after cleaning all the cooking pots. 17-year-old me never went back. Never got paid. F you, Shoney's. You're out of business now. Open mouth smile. I delivered pizza for one day. At the end of the day I did the math and the tips did not cover the gas I used. They had me driving 15 miles for some deliveries and my truck gets about 20 mpg. So 30 miles round trip is 1.5 gallons and that's not even factoring in the extra wear on my truck. Also the people were strange and they insisted that I call the one black kid who worked there an *** John. I refused. The kid was like, no, it's cool, that's what I call myself, and I politely declined and just called him John.
I delivered pizza for a few months. After the bill for replacing the brakes, I made nothing at all.
I politely declined, LMFAO.
What the F kind of Huckleberry Finn parallel universe are we living in?
I feel like that second part should have been the first part.
Yeah, this is what a lot of Uber drivers didn't understand about their job when it first started. They were working for below minimum wage most of the time due to the fact they take on all the running costs of a taxi company themselves. Uber would have been jumping with glee seeing people take it on full time. It was intended to be for little Granny May to make a couple of bucks here and there with a few rides in peak demand. It was not designed to ever be full-time employment.
Greater than they insisted that I call the one black kid who worked there an *** John. The F******.
I met a landscaping crew at a 50-acre cemetery at 8 a.m. The pay was just $5 per hour cash, in 2001, but my hours at Pizza Hut had been cut and I wanted to make a little money before going off to college. After 3 hours straight of WD-ing I couldn't feel my hands. I was filthy and hot AF. It was miserable. I was 18 and headed to a prestigious school in 2 months. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze, as they say. At lunch I told the guy, hey man, I'm just gonna go home and I'm not coming back. And he had a totally awesome response, no problem. I wouldn't want to do this poo at your age either. I'll pay you for the time you worked and drop it off at your house. $20 showed up about a week later. I hope life is going good, Mr. Sturley. Dishwasher at a restaurant chain. Imagine being extremely overworked, undervalued, no breaks, constantly moving. Dishes came so quick the main guy was hardly washing and plates went out with old dried food, slippery floors, dirty ass water, everyone being angry. Knocked the F out of there.
I worked as a dishwasher for about 6 weeks. The guys cooking thought it was funny to put hot pans fresh out of a 475F oven in my scrub sink. Only cooled dishes were supposed to go in there. Evidently, the guy who started after me ended up in the because he didn't know they did that. Guess I'm lucky my brother worked as a cook there and warned me to spray everything with water first to check if it's still hot.
Rule of thumb in most restaurants is you treat the dishwasher like a king. They eat first, chefs will usually make something really nice for them, and you never F with them because they are in the poo, and if the dish pit goes down, the entire restaurant grinds to a halt.
I had a week-long labor job. I was told I would be carrying decking lumber up a few stairs. What they didn't say was that the lumber was 6 by 6 treated lumber, so each load we were carrying was 150 pounds. And those couple of steps were 88 up from a lakeside property. I managed to survive 8 hours, but there was no way possible I could carry a few more tons of lumber up those stairs. I had to go to physio after to fix my knees.
I showed up. Was 15 minutes into orientation and paperwork. Regional corporate came in and sacked everyone, sans me. I was still the new hire. The regional came up to me and said, "This never happens, we'd love for you to stay." 2 hours later the regional has to leave for another location. The trainee from another branch that had come to run the branch I was at says, "They're about to sack everyone there too." I was like, okay, this isn't for me at all, and left. The regional called me the next day and asked me to reconsider. I thanked them for the courtesy, but nope. Edit: when a company shows you who they are, believe them.
I thought I was in shape, so took a second job loading trucks at FedEx. Boxes come at you so fast, it's hot, some are heavy AF. Never came back after one shift.
I took a job doing the same at a bed, bath, and beyond warehouse. Started the job at 310 pounds in late September. By early December I had dropped down to 274 pounds without changing my eating habits.
I worked at UPS. They give you a t-shirt that say "Body by UPS" on your first day. No AC in the warehouse and boxes start coming down the belt like bullets.
I worked for FedEx for 1 month. I worked my ass off more than everyone else, and the managers all loved me. So they kept putting me on all the biggest loads by myself, and it was Christmas time, huge never-ending loads for holidays. Every single night I had to fully stack 3 huge trailer trucks by myself with no effing help. Everyone else had a partner except for me. My manager said, "No offense, but everyone doesn't work as hard as you. You're going to rise up at this job very quickly because you don't slack. As you can see, everyone else moves slow as F and doesn't really give AF, so I appreciate you actually working at normal pace and above." The rule was once you started a truck, you couldn't leave until it was done. I wasn't getting overtime either. So every effing day I was doing about 2.5 hour overtime and not getting paid my time plus 1/2 like it was supposed to be, and ended up quitting. Not even the manager helped me when our job was literally done from an 8-hour shift. I was only scheduled for 8 hours but was working for 12 hours, plus I didn't know time plus 1/2 is only for anything over 12 hours. I was informed by my managers anything over my regular 8 hours was time plus 1/2. Quit the day I found that out.
Hired me as a cashier. Told me I'd be training for it and only working registers. Had me cleaning toilets and cart collecting in a thunderstorm, with basically no heads up. Just handed them my badge and walked out.
Told me on day 1 I'd be making $10 an hour instead of 13, only one other employee working there and he was about 40 to 50. He said hi, then asked if he could get $5 for a pack of cigarettes. Then I was told I would be making deliveries with my own car, when I was working the kitchen, and I'd have to work open close every day, and was openly told I'd have no chance of a raise because the store didn't make enough money. Boss lady turned around and I knocked right out of there faster than a pig in a slaughterhouse.
Where the hell did you work? That sounds highly illegal, almost all of it.
A privately owned Little Caesars Pizza, in May 2020, month 1 of the apocalypse.
First day at Burger King. I had to clean the men's bathroom. I go in there and there was poop everywhere, next to the toilet, on the ceiling, the walls and even the sink. I quickly walked out the bathroom, didn't even clock out, and just left the store and went home. I wasn't going to clean that, was awful.
Public bathrooms can be absolutely disgusting like that. I worked at Best Buy for a long time back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't my job to clean the bathrooms per se, but I would occasionally. One time one of the managers told me to wash the bathroom and I walked in and it was like that. I immediately walked out and just said, "Nope. I'm not cleaning the bathrooms anymore. You can fire me if you want, but I'm not cleaning that poo up." I wasn't fired. He cleaned it himself. Coles. First off, they messed up the hiring pretty bad. A group of us spent an entire day trying to do the paperwork and whatnot. It was a hot mess and a huge red flag. But hey, I had been out of a job for 7 months, I needed this. First official day, I'm spending the first half of my shift doing training videos. The amount of dread I felt from the videos constantly emphasizing how you must push the store credit card or you're fired made me uneasy. I mentally checked out when they went over how you'll be fired if you don't have so many sign-ups in a month. I wanted to run, but I really needed the money. I thought I'd transfer out of cashier ASAP and be fine. After lunch, I did register training. It was a stupid slow day and I was expected to constantly be doing something, so I was bored out of my freaking mind. My trainer clocked out an hour into my training and I was pretty much left on my own with someone maybe walking by every now and again to check in. After my shift, I tried to talk to the manager about my possibilities. I had gotten another job offer and wanted to see if I could work a schedule out with both, but the manager wasn't there. I later got an angry voicemail ranting about how I wasn't allowed to work another job unless they worked around their 39.5-hour schedule, and I certainly couldn't do nights for the other company despite being scheduled all mornings that week, and how dare I be so bold to even bring up this subject. I dropped an immediate resignation notice on her desk the next day and left. F. Coles. They're nothing but whip-cracking assholes.
Didn't get a lunch break. Nothing comes between a guy and his food. Asterisk except my old boss, evidently.
I just quit a job that I started a month ago for that reason. After the first 12-hour day with no lunch, I told my boss that's a problem and he made it seem like it was my fault, as if he doesn't set the tone as the boss that signs the checks. It happened again this past Friday and I quit today, not giving them a chance for strike 3. If I feel like I have to argue for the bare minimum, you can get bent.
I got this job at a betting shop when I was 22 and I was basically given the job from the first interview, but the second interview the guy the first was going to work for was a total C, so I just told the first dude I wasn't going to show up and gave him my reasoning and he just said he understood and said thanks for telling him now rather than later.
Yeah, the first guy has had that happen at least a couple times.
Not my story but my mum's. She left her previous large company looking for a change of pace as she approaches retirement and thought she'd found the ideal place, small, in a field she was already familiar with, family-owned. Due to her expertise and general view on underqualified management, she explicitly told the owners, father and son, that she could not work with micromanagement and the more agency she has the better work they'll see. They happily told her it wasn't a problem. The previous person who had her job was sticking around for 5 business days to show my mum their systems. In that time she found out every system was outdated by nearly 25 years. Her job included taking attendance of the employees, adults, and publicly posting the sheet on a board. There were weekly all-hands meetings on what everyone was up to. During these meetings, the father relentlessly belittled everyone on their work and personal life. Every second that the previous employee wasn't showing her what to do for the job was filled with horror stories confirming the micromanagement was the only constant at the company, high turnover due to hostile work conditions. My mum's true final straw was when the son who owned the company called her at the end of the day to make sure she was leaving on time. Twice on consecutive days. She ended her employment with them on the second call after 3 days of working there.
I worked on as a cashier on a parking lot of a big shopping mall. I got a orientation of 2 hours and then my boss let me alone. The first customer wanted to pay me $300 with $20, Chilean pesos, and got mad cause I didn't had change. The next one asked something similar and the next and the next. When my boss came back I just quit.
As an ex-checkout operator, I feel you. So many people just assume you're a bank. Had to decline someone who wanted $100 out in $2 coins because I did not have that many coins in my till. They got me to call my supervisor so they could accuse me of being rude, racist, whatever. The supervisor just told them there was a bank across the road though lol.
I applied to be a seasonal package handler at UPS years ago. I go in for the orientation thing and I'm immediately put off by the manager, who just seemed really rude to begin with. The other 40 people and I were about 30 minutes into it when someone sneezed and the manager went off. That is the kind of effing bullpoo I'm talking about. I stood up before it seemed like she was finished and just said, "Not for me," and I walked out. I was surprised when I got in the car and about half of the remaining people walked out too.
Letter movement. You dodged a bullet and managed to get a bunch of other people to follow with you.
Sometimes you've got to be the first to give everyone else the courage to do what they're thinking.
Doug's wife came in at 11 a.m. to do the books. Set her giant 7-Eleven soda pop down in the work area. Computer repair area. I picked it up and moved it to the desk she was using. Just went off like a deranged demon. I felt so sorry for Doug. At that time in that area I was a sought-after tech. Started at competitor at 2 p.m.
Somebody help Doug.
Got a job at a post office. Quickly realized that literally everyone who came in was pissed off about something and hated the postal service. They weren't paying me enough to put up with that poo.
My S.O. worked at Subway for one day. They had just started training him when he walked into the back, looked up, and saw a dozen or so knives hanging from the ceiling. As his trainer was explaining the hilarious game they played of making the knives stick in the ceiling tiles, another employee walked through the doorway and whoosh, a knife fell down and pierced straight through the bill of their hat. Edit. Told my S.O. this blew up and he said he's proud, after calling me a karma W for stealing his story. Edit 2. I literally have no investment in this story, it happened 15 years ago to someone who is not me. If you don't believe it, I couldn't care less. I am loving the hilarious replies and enjoying my shining moment of Reddit glory smiley face.
I used to work at Subway. They did not give a poo about anything as long as you didn't mess with what they were selling. One of my coworkers smoked meth in the back of the store, no consequences. Then he got arrested for something entirely unrelated, and when he got out, they hired him again.
What the F?
I think those were his parting words.
The Subway of Damocles.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.